First, I want to welcome all of you here. We're really excited to have you, both Destination Groton Committee and the Groton Business Association. And you're all here for a particular reason, a specific reason. This is by invitation only. And you're here because you're either a mover and shaker in town, an influencer, or based on what you do here today, you're probably gonna be willing to volunteer and help us and volunteer for some kind of effort within Destination Groton following what we're saying. So that's why you're here. So welcome everybody. So what we're doing, creating business opportunities for economic growth while preserving the town we all love. So I just want to give a very, very brief update about who we are and how we got here. First, I'm Jeff Gordon, if you don't know that. I'm responsible for the Groton Fest family of events. I'm also the vice chair of Friends of Prescott, along with Steve Lane, who's the vice president of Friends of Prescott. Steve Lane is the president. And with the vice chair of the Destination Groton Committee, and with me is Greg Sheldon, our chair, Julie Platt, our clerk, Joni Parker Roach, and Brian Bolton. So we are consisting of the committee. So a short history about how we got here. It's hard to believe that almost 4 years ago we started this, and it started by Bob Pine and Greg Sheldon calling me and asking me to be the point person on an initiative studying the impact that the Groton Hill Music Center will have on the town of Groton. At the time, I have to be honest with you, I was wondering if I'm going to be the fall guy for this whole thing, or am I going to be a point person? So it ended up in really well. So September 21, after a full year of working on a report, the Destination Groton report, which you can find on the destinationgroton.com website and the Town of Groton website. After a full year of meeting in Zoom, all these fine individuals, Kevin Lindenberg, Greg Sheldon, Johnny Emerald as an advisor, Bob Pine, Steve Lane, Mary Jennings, me, and Lisa Fiorentino also as an advisor, came up with this report. Now what did this do? We identified 85 plus different assets in the town that already made us a destination community. For example, the trail network, open space, ecotourism, agritourism, arts and culture, our rich history, architecture, fine dining, hospitality, and what turned out to be discovery of a massive wedding industry, So we came up with this report. So what do we do next? After that, I presented to the select board and I presented to the planning board along with my colleagues, and Destination Groton Committee was charged. And in your folder, there's an insert that describes what we're charged for and all the accomplishments that we've done in lengthy detail since we started. But our mission is to tell Groton's quintessential New England story and help bring it to life. That's our mission. We also have a vision. So at town meeting, shortly thereafter, we were awarded a $15,000 budget. Incidentally, we gave $6,000 back to the town because we were very frugal in our spending. And we did 2 assemblies, a working group assembly and a focus group assembly, together, about a couple of hundred people, where we illustrated the town assets, and we also generated a beautiful website called destinationgroton.com, which you're going to see part of. We also put together a really impressive social media and digital marketing plan, but there's a play to this. It was a regional initiative producing local benefits, right? So in our path, we made relationships and strategic partners with the likes of Lori Trahan, Kate Fox, these high-level people in the state and local government. Margaret Scarsdale, Melissa, Roy Nascimento. So we've made some really good inroads. And so after that, with their help and with their guidance, we put together a Groton Regional Tourism Conference. Again, regional initiative producing local benefits. We had to bring together the region. So we had high-level people in from Pepperell and from Air and from Lowell and the Chamber of Commerce's and the Council of Governments and so forth. It was a regional presentation. A lot of you, I think maybe 15% of you were here at that day. So more strategic partners like Chris Hayes, the North Middlesex Council of Governments, Glenn Eaton, Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, and then Karen Chapman and Tracy Murphy were instrumental in awarding us a $45K grant to study Groton's retail spending, specifically the leakage. And then again, last week, we were just notified that we got another $15,000 grant now to track actual visitor spending, people who come to Groton and what they spend. So our goal for today is to present our vision of the town center. Now, this was first raised 15 years ago with the master plan that was developed 15 years ago, 15 years ago, which is necessary to capture Groton's economic growth opportunity. So that's why you're here. That's what we're here to present. And I ask that you hold your questions until the question and answer segment. We have a lot of information to go through, and I have a particular request for all the presenters and the board, the panelist people. Make your answers succinct, clear, and relatively short, because we don't have a lot of time. So you're going to be tested. And then Greg Sheldon, who's the chair of the Destination Groton Committee. And thank you, gentlemen, for both being here.
Well, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm a little confused, but do you hear that sound? Do you hear that?
I hear the rain.
Well, it's actually people in the audience saying, "Who is that guy?" He looks familiar.
You look so much older.
Tell us who you are and why you're here.
Well, first of all, my name is Tim Hess, and as Jeff said a little bit ago, I lived here in Groton from 2004 till 2012, and over the course of that time, I became involved with what I understood then to be really a very broad-based effort that had already graduated through an iteration or two and continued to evolve. So I found myself on this thing called the Station Avenue Committee. Not long after that, became a member of the planning board, and around that time, Station Avenue worked to develop the overlay district, sort of codify this district, and develop some design guidelines for it. I was involved in those things, and sometime later found myself on the design review committee for what I believe was the first application for development under what had by then morphed, I think, for this project into the town center overlay district. So I've got that kind of experience with thinking about downtown.
That's wonderful. So it says here you're an architect. Can you tell us what you have against technology?
I don't have anything against technology. I'm an architect. There are a lot of us out there, and it's not an especially special or unique thing to be. There's a lot of different ways into the field, and a lot of different flavors and profiles of practice. For me, the kind of architect that I am starts with the way that I feel places. It's sort of my way of being an architect is really a kind of struggle to analyze and understand how I feel in a landscape through a sequence of places in a city or in a building. As I come to orient myself, whether I'm in a new place or becoming acquainted with a new home or a new town, I can't help. I sort of obsess in this analytical way to try to understand how is this place composed? What are the sort of spatial puzzles happening here? And I can't help but work again, almost sort of compulsively, I just find myself struggling through working on how to piece through solutions to these puzzles. That's just kind of how I am in the world. It's not as much a career choice as it is just a way of being.
So given the title of our discussion today, Envisioning the Future, Past and Present, tell us, do you believe in time travel?
I haven't seen too many great examples of time travel, but there is a pretty well understood sentiment or hope in planning and urban design that a good idea and a good plan can kind of come back to life and can be lasting and endure.
Thank you. Well, my attempts at channeling Zach Galianakis, welcome everybody, and thank you, Tim, for being here. Could you expound a little bit more, take us back to the era, 2005, 7, 14, when a lot of people came together in town and had this vision for how to make our town center a walkable experience, vibrant, and the plan was developed and reiterated over time. Can you take us back and describe some of the input from people like yourself and others in town?
Yeah, I can try. I feel a little self-conscious answering that because I know there's so many other people in this room that were there and had their own experiences. Mine isn't better than theirs, but the way it felt to me was that there was a kind of awareness. I imagine maybe it was initiated through the kind of launch and opening of the rail trail, which back then had not been underway all that long. It was still pretty new. Probably a bunch of excitement in town about what that might mean for town. It seems pretty clear that it seems to me obvious, and it must be true for others, that this whole zone of space along the tracks, the rail trail, it's still, the parcels are delineated, the lot shapes are configured, many of the buildings are the kind of residue of what would have been trackside development that made some sense for rail service. And a next level of evolution, a next stage of development, the next way that those bits of space and place and real estate could contribute to the vitality of the town seems quite evidently it hasn't yet come to pass. They haven't bloomed, and it seemed pretty obvious, I think, to a lot of people that there was some kind of potential there. So, ultimately there was sort of consultations with planning groups. Peter Flinker from Dodson and Associates led a number of sessions in town hall. These things you walk around the room and there's pretty pictures on the wall of here's kids getting an ice cream cone, and here's happy people walking their dog, and here's tourists coming into town spending money. Put your little red dot on the things that you like. Input in so many ways. It's got big sessions, formal gatherings like this, informal, put your dot on the wall, multiple kind of committees that were formed to try to envision this place. The diagram you see here is one that I remember well. The piece of this that I felt especially strongly about, you can see at what I'll call the terminus. So for those that are not familiar, the Boutwell House is here, kind of beautiful historic terminus of this Station Avenue. Main Street, and I was constantly trying to remind people this is also a state highway, 20,000, a tide of 20,000 people moving in and out every morning and afternoon. But the piece of this that felt most important to me was the idea that for any district here to thrive and for there to be any kind of vitality that is compelling and sort of seductive, for me, it depended on the success of something at the end. So the language that found its way into this diagram, here you can see a grand civic space to create a kind of focus of activity at the end of Station Avenue, a landmark building to punctuate the end of Station Avenue and create a focus for the civic space. And then, in a way, the thing that I was kind of most excited about, the gateway at the base of the hill, a gateway from this axis onto the rail trail and then onto the Broad Meadow and beyond. These are a few images of a model that I built because I couldn't help myself. I felt like that that grayscale image we just saw is the kind of thing that I'm accustomed to studying and reading all the time. It's part of my work, and that's true for a good range of people. But I felt like in order to communicate the potential for a kind of spatial three-dimensional reality, it was going to be helpful to try to represent this thing in built form. So this is 2008, maybe. I'm not even sure of the year that was, but what I tried to represent here in the lower image, you can see this kind of grand pavilion. I thought about it as both a framework through which you could look from Station Avenue out to the Broad Meadow, but also the kind of thing that could house certain civic activities. You could hold a farmer's market in there. You could hold a kind of, any sort of small public forum there, or you could just hang out and have lunch. This diagram we have here came about, I think, as many as 4 years later. I see here the date, 8/10/2011. That was, I just realized a couple days ago, exactly the same date that the Design Review Committee issued our first report to the Planning Board, having reviewed the proposal for, I think it's called Boynton Meadows at the former Kilbridges at 134 Main Street. And one of our conclusions, quite frankly, we weren't very happy with the project and didn't feel like it manifests the intent of the district, and frankly didn't feel like it had earned some of the density bonus and other advantages that the district was intended to leverage. But the primary weakness, in my opinion, and I think it was shared by the rest of the committee, was that development declined any opportunity to connect. The parcel had kind of a long snorkel or a flag from skinny frontage on Main Street to a broad bulk in the back. And we came to understand that the road and the cul-de-sac was sort of inevitable and the only real way to take advantage of the volume that didn't exist on the street. And yet we felt strongly and really worked very hard to get them to connect. Don't just build a cul-de-sac, but enable connection to your adjacent neighbors so that when and if those parcels sell and develop, and we felt like that was likely and imminent. In fact, I think as we wrote this report, both of the adjacent parcels, including the one we occupy now, were for sale. And this diagram here, again, I kind of cranked it out in a fury late one night, but the Kilbridge parcel is one of those vertical roads that moves up toward Gibbet Hill, and as it was actually developed, it's just a lollipop. But what this tries to say is, look, if you don't just do a cul-de-sac, but enable connection left and right, you can begin to initiate the possibility for relieving the pressure and the bottleneck that we have here in this sort of 3-block tight corner. Sometimes I call it the bow tie here in Groton Center. Anyway, so that's what that diagram, in a way it's quite fanciful, but it's meant to illustrate the need and the power of connectivity and circulation and creating a fabric and relieving congestion and pinch points.
So the evolution was town meetings around, public hearings around this. The planning board was definitely involved, and the town planner, and many of those folks are in the room with us. this morning. So it evolved from a Station Avenue design guideline to a town center overlay district. So it's that progression from a concept to having the zoning authority to see mixed-use development and a little more denser, walkable downtown along Station Avenue. So sort of fast forward, and I'll bring it to the present, and as we look back, what's different, what's changed since 2012-14 to 2024? Well, we like to say, as Jeff indicated earlier, 4 years ago, a group of us said, gee, in 2 years, this phenomenal venue is coming to town. What does it mean for the future, and how do we embrace it and encourage the development around what bringing tourism could mean for the town and to our revenue stream, but maintaining the beauty, constantly reinforcing we're not looking to become wall-to-wall visitors. It's a question of understanding the context and the scope. Groton Hill Music opened in September of 2022. The regional impact has been extraordinary. Groton Hill Music has contributed to the destination reputation Groton already enjoyed and has added a new dimension in partnership with the Groton community. In 18 months of operation, the Music Center has educated nearly 2,500 enrollments in its 35 classrooms, held over 60 performances in its 2 world-class concert halls, and has provided music free to the communities across the region. Concert attendance has attracted over 32,000 people to date from over 500 communities throughout New England and beyond. Groton Hill voluntarily established a Groton Community Fund that gives the town of Groton $2 from each ticket price sale in order to support the town as a community partner. Last year, these funds amounted to roughly $64,000. That wasn't here 10 years ago. It's brought us to thinking about the future and what we can do to embrace it. Over time, Groton Hill has the potential to significantly increase its economic impact on Groton's tourism base. We live in an area called North Central Massachusetts. It's roughly 30 communities, and we are smack in the middle of it. North Central Massachusetts in 2022 generated $194 million in visitor spending. Groton, of that 194, generated $21 million. In 2022, this was prior to the opening of Groton Hill Music. Our room tax generated $175,000, and our meals tax $240,000 plus. Those are significant new revenue streams to the town and to our tax base. One example that we've been engaged with the Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, they conducted a study over Memorial Day weekend in 2019 of the rail trail at Station Avenue. And over the course of 5 days, they counted 3,995 users of the trail. It's a lot of traffic right at Station Avenue and the rail trail. Increased tourism generates economic benefits directly through concert tickets, attendees, local meals, and shopping, indirectly by expanding existing businesses to meet and service the need, and induced. These are new jobs and income spent across different sectors of the economy. So it's a net benefit. Retail gap. This is an example that, let me just give you a little context. So one way to strengthen a local economy is to promote businesses that can capture large shares of local consumer spending. A retail gap analysis highlights the difference between what a community's residents spend and how much their spending occurs locally. Those are quotes from the 2012 master plan. When they looked at the retail gap, it was $209 million. It's much more today. The Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission recently conducted a retail gap study for Destination Groton. Two examples: the apparel and service industry, clothing, footwear, jewelry. Groton residents spent $16,825,000 in 2023. Groton sales were $179,000. The retail gap or leakage going out of town to purchase these goods and services, $16.5 million. Household furnishings, textiles, appliances in 2023. Here again, Groton residents spent nearly $14 million. Groton sales were roughly $283,000. Therefore, the retail gap was $13.5 million. It's a lot of money. Town center. As Groton feels the effect of becoming a destination community, it is probable the needs of visitors will alter the current offerings of meals, lodging, and shopping. This may lead to changes of use for existing buildings in town center. So as a committee, Destination Groton has a series of next steps that, based on our conversation today, we would like to pursue. We plan to work with the planning board to help draft and update the master plan chapter on economic development. We would like to see an implementation plan associated with the master plan that captures the economic potential and works over time to make it a reality. We are researching and plan to release a 10-year vision strategic plan that will promote a Groton Town Center vision to the development community and attract small retail businesses to service the needs of town residents and visitors alike. We call for a renewed master plan vision for town center. That is my presentation, and we will be taking questions after the panel sessions.
Thank you.
Did I make it on time?
No, let's go.
I think everyone in this room is probably very bullish on the future of Groton and its economic potential. And I think the panel is as well, and that we can all agree that there is potential that is still to be realized. And we have so much to work with, from this inn, the music center, the wedding industry, nice restaurants, the schools, all of the outdoor amenities that the town has. I would ask the panel, just generally, what are your thoughts on that statement, that Groton has economic potential that we can still realize? What do you feel still needs to be done? How do we get there? What's missing? Anyone can start that.
Hi. Well, certainly, I think there is a great deal of potential that can come from tourism and from people coming and visiting Groton. We talk about the Groton Hill Music Center a lot, and I get that, but it's more than the Groton Hill Music Center. There are so many things that happen in this town and so many wonderful things that can draw people in, and I think it's about figuring out how to make this known to people, giving the entire community all the different holistic services that they need. And I think it was kind of addressed when we were talking to Greg Shelton as well, that people are leaving Groton to do what they need to do, and we're having people now come into Groton. Greg has listed some numbers, but actually after March, we're about 40,000 people that have come through our doors that are coming from all over the place. They're coming from Connecticut and Rhode Island and New York and every place else. And so they need a place to stay, and they need to be able to do things. And I am hoping, as a Groton resident, that Groton takes advantage of most of that. I'd say quickly, because I want to hand it to other people, I think it's about being proactive. Maybe looking at a model community and trying to figure out how they did everything that they did. And it sounds like that's what the Destination Groton Committee is going to be doing, is looking at this and trying to see what their challenges were and how they addressed them, and then creating a model for what it could look like in Groton.
Thank you. there is definitely economic potential here. We have seen it just with what the Inn's been able to do, the Fortune Vine restaurant. You look back 20 years plus now and you see what Gibbet Hill, the Grill has done, as well as the wedding venue there. They took a big leap when nobody was driving east to west to come out here. And so they kind of put Groton on the map, and we've all built around that. We can be more than just Groton and the surrounding communities. Anytime you have a business and you're trying to grow that business, one of the key things is marketing. Look at the stakeholders. The stakeholders include the people that live in town, the businesses in town, the people that are enjoying the experiences there, and then the town itself, tax revenue. If we can partner with the town, and one of the ways to do that is to perhaps look at, and this was something that Destination Groton had in their plan with the town, to bring in an economic development officer that would be perhaps part-time. Develop it in a way that within 2 to 3 years, that position pays for itself. It can be done through the grants that are raised. It can be done through additional retail development that's done, commercial development. It can be done, believe it or not, even through residential. The property down at 500 Main Street, that is going to be a substantial net generator, despite what some people have said on social media, of tax revenue for the community. It will also bring in additional residents that will shop in our restaurants and retail. I think one of the things that the town has done that has been very positive, and hopefully this will continue, is creating zoning that supports these types of businesses. Creating the zoning, as we've seen with Station Ave, doesn't turn something around within a year or two. There's so many other factors that play into that. I believe that zoning was put in place prior to the crash of 2008, the downturn in the economy. Nobody was coming into the market with new development at that point, and it took several years to bounce back from that. You look at what happened with COVID, same thing. So, but the underlying zoning is critical. Just speaking about our property next door, that's in the town center overlay district. We're able to develop multiple units there. The carriage house will be renovated. The Waters House is being put back into service and, is being restored to its former glory. It doesn't happen if it's not in the town center overlay district. The economics aren't there. So again, working with the town, it's been a tough few months with what we've just gone through with the Prop 2.5 question, but it takes spending to increase revenue. And if we can do that together and collaboratively between the businesses and the powers to be down at Town Hall, I think we'll all benefit.
So I guess first off, I would agree that there's a great deal of potential here in Groton. I grew up in Groton, a couple miles up Route 40, and so I've seen it grow over the years. I would say Groton was rural when I was a kid. It is no longer rural. It's, I would say, squarely suburban, and that comes with pros and cons. I'd say more pros than cons, but I think part of what makes Groton such a unique place, I think it started with the schools hundreds of years ago, but we have a few businesses in town, and we are sort of on that edge of sort of the gravitational pull of Boston. And so I think we are a unique community, and I think all of the, whatever we end up doing as a community, we need to retain that uniqueness. We shouldn't be, I think, as far as the individual businesses go, we have a job to do our businesses the right way, and I think from a marketing perspective, Gibbet Hill doesn't really market very much. We believe in market, our marketing is sort of day in and day out doing a good job. And I think all of the businesses up here do believe in that as well. So day in and day out, we do a good job. We have the support of people in town government that make our job easier. I work with a lot of different towns with different restaurants and event facilities that we manage. Hingham, Peabody, Burlington, North Andover, like 6 or 7 others. Groton is an excellent town government in place, and so I think that makes it an easier lift for all of us. So I think it's really exciting because I think we are on this precipice of COVID's behind us, 2008 is behind us. Like what we do next is sort of going to be interesting. We need to make sure that we retain our character of what we are as a town, but I think there's a lot of potential.
So as my colleagues here in the panel have talked about, clearly Groton has plenty of additional potential going forward from an economic development standpoint. I think that at a strategic level, building around the major cultural and economic hubs that, if you want to talk right here in the center of town, the Groton Inn, Forge and Vine, Gibbet Hill, the cultural center, and the wedding industry, that's a great place to start and build from. What I see in Groton, when I look at it holistically, from Four Corners all the way to the river and the bridge, is the thoroughfare of 119. And in that, there's a lot more than just the hotel restaurant industry. What's out there at the small business level, and as a small business owner, is that there is an array of health and wellness that is potentially untapped. And what Groton provides from its ecotourism standpoint, the preservation, the character, the rural charm, that is such a critical and integral part of what the constituents had said in the Destination Groton report. If you've read it, and it's lengthy, but it's worth the read, is that they want to preserve the character, the culture, the charm, the quintessential New England town. And if we're gonna do that, then I think that holistically, Destination Groton shouldn't just be about a singular cultural event or a dining experience. Those enhance it. But what Groton's potential is to be a holistic health, spiritual wellness area, if you will, a hub for all of that, we're bringing in people from all across the world. I mean, we've talked about local area, but the reality is we look at, those that are staying here in the Groton Inn or going and eating at Gibbet Hill, it is international as far as what the local schools bring. Canada, Europe, frequently, Africa. We've had all these customers come into our stores. So there's an international presence that the academic community brings. And if they see something like a holistic health and wellness spiritual experience where you could, go ahead and from wedding preparation and facials and beauty and hair and nails to something else, to holistically embrace that health, and all the other small businesses up and down 119 that seem to be on that, from dental to Ambrosia that just opened up. I think that's a significant piece that we need to loop in as far as the messaging of what Groton brings, because that can help everyone feel good about themselves. And once they're there, then they can go in transcendental if you want to be. And we talk about a lot of these things about a mini Concord. Well, let's not be a mini anything. Let's be second to none and embrace that holistic look at it. I grew up in Bedford, Massachusetts. I knew what rural was in the 70s. You could cow tip in that town, believe it or not. And I could ride my bicycle safely from there to Concord Center, run around the Old North Bridge. Very familiar with that. And I moved away for 25 years and I've come back. And what I see is, yes, there's a significant change in that town. Concord somehow maintained its same rural charm, historic presence. And I understand and see what Groton wants to achieve in that same parallel. And it's important to do that for this community. I'm just suggesting that we do have some solid hubs, but holistically embracing all of those other small businesses and health and wellness, I think would be a strategic leap forward in the presentation and how we market that to those in the outlining and surrounding communities. Thank you.
Great, thanks everybody. That's interesting because you're almost talking about like a health and wellness consortium, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone discuss that before and bring it all together. So that's a really great point. I heard a lot of agreement around the potential and maximizing the potential, and I think everyone in this room would agree with that. I have friends that, I talk about what I'm doing with this committee, and they're like, oh, businesses can never make money in Groton, and there's some negativity. So are we doing enough is the town doing enough to realize the potential that we want? And do people outside of this room all agree with this in your experiences, and what can we do? So you guys touched on some of it, but are there things that we still need to do to be attractive to, say, budding entrepreneurs that live within town or are in outside areas that would maybe haven't thought about Groton as a place to start a business?
Just because I'm holding this out.
I think it's sharing the vision that we have for Groton. So for instance, the Destination Groton Committee is creating this vision and everyone in this room agrees with that vision. I think it's about inviting people. You have to make people feel that Groton's accessible, that this is the place to be. The website that Joni showed earlier starts that whole thing. I think it's about making sure that people know that there is potential here and using all of the benefits that Groton can bring to be able to tell businesses, this is a place that you want to be. So I really do think it goes back, John mentioned it earlier, it goes back to marketing, and you have to market the town. I think that that's part of it, and I think what the Destination Groton Committee has started to do is doing quite a bit of that, but you have to be even more proactive. I think if you sit by passively and wait for someone to look and say, hey, that's a great place to be, that won't work. So I think it's about really making the commitment that we really want businesses here holistically. I completely agree with that. And then going out and saying, here, this is a place you want. This is how you can make it happen. I've seen, and I don't know that we have this, perhaps we do, but how do you do business in Groton? And giving people the ins and outs of how to make all of that happen, I think can make a real difference. It's hard to start a business, we all know that. And so how do you make it as easy as possible for that business owner to go, hey, that's a place I want to be, it's up and coming, and look, I have this whole map about how I go about doing that, and I think that could make a difference.
So you just gave a sneak preview of the news section of the website, which we weren't going to talk about today, but open for business.
Okay.
And it's exactly that.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think other ways. I think the question again was, how can the town help to move along, help small businesses and not even necessarily small, come into the community, and we accrue all the benefits as a community from those businesses and those people being here. I think letting companies know here at this property, what makes us successful, it is our people, it's our managers, our staff, our culinary team, everybody, and they live within a 15 to 25 minute radius of here. Most of them come from the west. I'd put them up against anybody in the Boston market. So to be able to educate other small businesses that there's a really great talented pool of employees that are, have close proximity to the town. As far as the town government goes, we've had a good experience with permitting projects, but my company, myself, and my partners also have a lot of experience, combined over 130 years worth of experience in doing the projects. So it can appear to be intimidating when other businesses come into town and not understanding the process. How do you get your arms around that? I think if the planning board, the ZBA, the town planner, the building commissioner, if they are also looking at the entire picture, not just their specific department, their specific role, but how everything is interconnected. And we do have a land use planning committee, which is very helpful. But again, how many people know about that? It's one stop. You go in and every department head gets to take a look at your plan. Kind of digging down into the weeds here, but it's important because people, I think some companies may not come because they just don't understand that process. So to be able to, a little bit of town government is just, again, looking at it as the big picture, not just their single department, understanding the benefits that will be accrued by the town in terms of tax revenue and spending here in the community, and just being a resource for those people. And certainly, I'm sure others on this panel have gotten calls from people that want to open up businesses in town. They've been referred by folks down at town hall, and we're happy to talk with them. But again, it comes down to that word collaboration.
Going back to that sort of longer picture of Groton, it is, we've had a very good stretch run. When I was growing up, it was, I think, similar from a lot of towns around here. And I think we've sort of distinguished ourselves a little bit. Where's Tenwood? Great Barrington? What town is that? Lennox, right. So that area, I think, that town is known, right? It's got spots, Concord might be a model, Lennox might be a model, I think it takes time though, it takes decades, you know, and I think we're on that path, but I don't think we're totally there. But there's nothing that I see that won't get us there. It just takes time. It takes more and more people knowing about us. We had a couple last October Uber from New Jersey to eat at Gibbet Hill and walk up at the top of the hill. And that was, I don't know how they found out about us, but over time, we've, you know, Groton has gotten to be known. There are people coming for the leads in October. We're busier than we've ever been. And, you know, I just sort of, it amazes me, but, you know, I can definitely feel there's a momentum coming, but we're, you know, the best thing we can do is just keep it moving, just sort of continue to do our jobs and continue to be, you know, a great place to be. But it's, I think we're moving in that direction no matter what, but we definitely need to have everyone growing, you know, in the same direction to get there.
So from the cooperation with the town, as we started Lily and James, we saw an opportunity, and I think this is the same thing that many small businesses need to see an opportunity going forward. Is we had this during the pandemic, so you know you have to be a student of history, and I know that's been one of the subjects here about preserving Groton's history. But even in business, you got to study the trends, you got to study the models, you got to look macro, micro picture, and see where are we going to be going. And when we assessed, hey, these were the impacts of the Spanish flu, and we said, okay, here's COVID-19. Where's going to be the window? Where's the breakthrough? And you have to have the vision, just like the GBA does and the Destination Groton, but you have to be patient, and you have to exercise patience when working with a bureaucracy. And it doesn't matter if it's local, state, and you got to manage your own expectations. Starting and growing a business, everyone talks about the 5-year plan, but to even get to the doors opening, it could be a year-long process. And that does include the town, especially if you want to do renovations and going through the series of boards. The process online is actually pretty simple. When you submit it, and I've worked with the building department before when we started Lily and James and going through that entire process. It can be done as a small business because the space that you go in Groton may not be ready to go. You may have to invest capital, and you have to factor that into your budget. At the end of the day, it's about doing your homework. And Groton being a very inclusive community, presenting that and showing, and it's great to hear, Brian, that this is going to be another section and saying, hey, these are the checks you need to go through. It's not just file and start up your business, whether you're as a DBA or an LLC or however you want to formulate it legally. But there's a whole nother road from that flashpoint when you decide to turn that idea and passion that you have in your life, whether it's in the service industry or whatnot. How do you get to the grand opening? And then, more importantly, build that consumer and customer loyalty built upon service. You know, everyone here has talked about it. The reason why they come back for consumer loyalty boils down to people. And if you don't treat your people with dignity and respect every time and have that smile when they come in that door, they're not going to come back. It's about people at the end of the day. How we welcome people into the community, how we treat people in our various service industries. Thank you.
Just following up, Jason, so when you started Lily and James, were you looking at other towns, or were you always going to open a business in Groton? And if you did look at other towns, why did you choose Groton?
Well, we did our homework. I mean, thanks for the question. So the first thing, I mean, if you're going to spend your own personal capital and your skin in the game, you're going to do your homework. I mean, this is elementary, high school, you know, do your demographic analysis, the data that you looked at. We did the same thing for the surrounding communities. And what we saw was a niche. And you need to find what your competitive advantage is in business. How are you going to differentiate yourself from anyone else that's in the community? Number one, we saw that need. I mean, it's Maslowian, food, shelter, clothing, right? At the bottom of the pyramid. So that's the first thing we saw. We looked at the area. We saw Evans to the west. We saw Acton, TJ Maxx, Westford to the east. And if you know how Massachusetts is laid out, there's like supposed to be 5 miles between town centers. That 5 to 10 miles is the distance, average distance, and a lot of this goes back to the Minutemen and how fast they could move. We saw our need, and we said there's very little to the north. You have to go to Nashua, or you're going to Fitchburg. So it was a sweet spot. It was a sweet spot in the convention communities, and especially the intersection right out here at 40 and 119. You just gotta look at the DOT data. It's the synthesis, it's synthesizing the analytics and turning that data into information which makes informed business decisions. And so the short answer is, we did our homework, we found the best location. It's unfortunate what happened to Angie's Nails. That's, it happens. That happened. But you got to rise from the ashes, and that was the approach that we took. It was based on homework and good analytics. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's a wrap. We're getting the yank here on the time. Thanks, everyone. That was really interesting.
I predict that an investor, developer, builder, gets the word on the town's vision, does their due diligence, decides to develop multi-use buildings, leasing retail shops on the bottom of these structures on Station Avenue, and leasing housing on the second or even third levels on Station Avenue. So here's my bigger prediction, is that I predict that the developer who wants top dollar for their rents, that money will be excessive, too high for most boutique, Lily and James type boutique shops for the area. So there's going to be a disparity in what they can afford and what the landlord's going to want to charge. A big disparity. So my question is this: what types of things can the town do to bridge that gap of affordability between the tenant and the landlord? What can they do to help out the small guy, the family-oriented company, small boutique, retail shop? What can they do to help bridge the gap? That's my question.
You're not going to like the answer.
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, first, when somebody does a development or opens a business, I think the last panelist pointed out due diligence. You have two types of entrepreneurs. You have the institutional, the big chains, etc. You also have the institutional lenders, and they have their metrics. All chains, you have the ICS, the International Council of Shopping Centers. Essentially, is a big international group of good old boys that decide where all their Kmart's and Macy's, etc. go. On the other hand, you have non-institutional mom and pop boutique type of businesses. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds, but essentially the type of scenario you outline will be somebody who hasn't done their due diligence. Because the free hand of the marketplace, the town does not have any control over that. Land costs what it costs, rents are what the market will demand, construction costs, interest rates, those are all things beyond the control of local government. So let's keep our expectations realistic. On the other hand, I saw a lot of good ideas here. I think we're talking about the formation of an economic development champion, an advisor. I think that would be a great service, because it puts the town planner in a tough spot trying to do that, because they're also judge and jury when something comes forward. So I think having some part of the town that is an advocate and advisor, coach, mentor, that teaches the prospective businesses how to go about getting started, I think is very important. I was curious to see, not curious, but interested to see, when it comes to successful or shopping for services or goods. There are three main factors. It's convenience, value, and experience. That is, most people don't go to Costco for experience. Well, maybe some people do, but what do these hats say? And I think what is the theme that I've heard tonight is, or this morning, so it's going on a long time, is what Groton should be, the holistic, all points to experience. And I think that's where the town has an edge. You have hotels down in Devon's. This place provides an alternative where you don't have a hotel down there, a chain. You have a unique downtown, a New England downtown. People get tired of staying there. You can come up here for the same price, enjoy the experience of the downtown, and I think that's something to capitalize. In terms of financial assistance, you don't really have much in the way for non-residential. Affordable housing is a plenty with different types of assistance to create more housing, etc. You don't really have that in the non-residential sphere. Sorry.
So yeah, I think Russ is correct that can't really offer any financial incentives, but what I can tell the business community, and I've had the pleasure of working with some of you, is if you come to the land use department, whether you're a large business or a mom and pop shop, we're going to treat you with the same level of respect, regardless of who you are. So we have that going for us. Whether that helps you or not, to get to the end point, I can't really say, but my role as land use director is to make sure that we implement our land use regulations equitably, fairly, treat everybody with the same level of respect. So that's one thing I can offer.
Yeah, thanks. I'm tempted to just say what they said, but I think the notion of using things like TIFs as a way to incent.
My process.
Sorry, as a way to incent business owners and property owners to lower their tax rates is one that you might consider, except I would say in the current environment where we are right now, I don't see that as being something that the town would be really willing to entertain in a serious way. I do think, though, that it's important to message what Groton actually does provide already. I think to a lot of businesses, and we've seen this with some of the master plan data that we've already culled within the planning board, that the tax situation for businesses here in Groton is actually pretty, in the words of Larry David, pretty good. So compared to our neighboring towns, and so there are reasons, financial reasons, for people to start to move into town. And I think that at heart, what this really gets to is a messaging and marketing issue that really we need to get our arms around to talk about the holistic benefits of being here in Groton. And it's not just for restaurants and hotels. It's actually, as one of the panelists in the previous portion talked about, it's a more holistic view. And I would say from sustainability side of things, there's a lot of ecotourism and agritourism that can also be pulled into that conversation that we should be really investing in to help drive forward the benefits of the farms. This town was built on the backs of farmers, and it needs to be maintained. If you want to maintain the culture and the vistas and the things that we have here in town, we should be doing things to help the farmers be successful as they go forward.
I think one of the things I want to follow up on what the previous panel said and what Phil said is the permitting process at Town Hall is very, very important. When I first got here, one of the stories I was told was a local business tried to open up, and it took them 18 months to get through the Town Hall permitting process. So one of the things we did right away was to form the land use committee and the land use department and try to expedite that process so that when people come into Town Hall, they were able to find out exactly what they need, and they don't go to the Conservation Commission and then find out they got to go to the Planning Board and then find out they have to go to the Board of Health. We try to make sure people come in and understand the entire process moving in, and our Planning Board and our land use director has done a great job doing that for us. The tax incentive financing that Phil just mentioned for tips, I think that's a good thing. We had a local business person come see us about 2 or 3 months ago, interested in doing that. We're gonna try to work with them in terms of coming up with a way to make it more affordable for them to come in, but time is money. If people can come in and get permitted fast and get up and going, they don't have to spend a lot of money on development costs, they can get going right away. And it was nice to hear Jed say and John say that they enjoy going through the town hall process, because I think that's important, and that's something that we try to do.
I didn't say I enjoyed it.
We enjoy having you come through.
Mark, did you go? Okay. Thank you. So my next question is this. The essence of Destination Groton, the theory of it, the opportunity that it apparently presents. Do you all agree that in large part that the town hall as an entity, that the town, the representatives of the town as a whole entity need to adopt this vision in order for it to be successful?
I think in a way we do, in terms of, the downtown, the overlay district that we have. There's expedited permitting that you can go through, that you get a permit within 6 months, and it's done as one permit. Recently, John talked about the 500 Main Street project. They came in and they went through a zoning board of appeals process that can be very arduous and very difficult. But the ZBA did a great job working with them. And I think that the attitude of Town Hall is we want businesses to come to town. We want to help them. We want to make sure that when they come in, they get the right information. And Takashi will tell you that every year when him and I sit down to set goals, customer service is our #1 goal. We want to make sure that when people come into Town Hall, they do have, even though Jed doesn't think it's that enjoyable, that they do have a good experience when they come in. And we work on that constantly. So I think that's my answer to that.
So I think it's a little bit of, it's one thing to have the processes in place and have the district in place here for the downtown overlay district around Station Avenue. It's another thing to actually let the world know that it's here. And one of the things that I think is important and would be important would be to have an organization within town governance that could be the spokesperson. We talked about having a coach. I think Russ talked about having a coach, but also having a mouthpiece to actually talk out to the world about Groton being open for business and having that notion of having a place to land if you're looking for a place to expand your business or open your business going forward. And I think that's a big piece. Relative to your question about having the whole town governance sort of together, I think one of the speakers in the previous panel talked about having various parts of town government sort of looking at things that are beyond their normal scope. And I think that's an important piece. So when we talk about situations that we need to deal with, like the issue around some of the roads flooding during rainstorms and whatnot, and how we're going to overcome that, I think we need to look holistically at how we're going to make those changes in an environmentally sensitive way, but also in a way that improves traffic flows, that improves the overall walkability and bikeability of the town. And those notions actually will help with the ecotourism business, that will help with the people who are coming here to just explore things around Groton as well. And that goes beyond an individual board or commission. It actually encompasses multiple. And I think finding ways for us to do that in a more holistic way, I think is very important.
So, yeah, I agree with what's been said so far. I think that in general the answer is yes. The town hall should definitely buy into what's going on. And to some degree that's already happened. The town voters at town meeting adopted the town center overlay district as part of the bylaw. So that's there. Whether it's being fully implemented, a lot of that, we talked about how to tap into that potential, and some of that would fall on the business communities to take a little risk, a little initiative, do their homework, and then decide to make the leap. When they come to town, we'll do what we can to help facilitate them toward that goal. So it's a multi-layered question with different answers. The general answer is yes, and there's certain things we can do. And the planning board recently had a project before them that brought to light something we already knew about, but there's a need to improve the parking situation, the traffic flow and safety in the center of town. And so that's something that the town can look at and try to bring to bear resources to help improve that. So that's just one example of how we can work together on that.
Time to go into the weeds. I attended a webinar yesterday. The title was How Zoning Has Ruined the American City. And there's a lot of truth to that. Zoning makes development of desirable places illegal. Think about that. Places that you really like in Groton, the neighborhoods close to the center where all the kids go trick-or-treating, can't do that now under current zoning. You get 2-acre zoning, it's spreading people out. Downtown, Fortune, not so much Fortune Vine, but where Salt and Light, those little strips, people kind of gravitate to that. Can't do it now because of zoning. Most places we are attracted to could not be built today due to zoning laws. And that's something to keep in mind. Retail, brick and mortar retail and services is really hard now. The pandemic, the online shopping has basically created a whole different landscape. I think the vision that's being expressed here, I think, is looking at a niche that will try to offset those forces that are working against downtown development in Groton. Parking. People don't realize it, but we're all subsidizing free parking. The amount of parking that's required basically takes away from developable real estate. And my experience has been, as a planner doing this for a long time, most parking studies we do for downtowns, people decry, we don't have enough parking. Well, you don't have enough parking is a perception, because compare the perception of available parking in walking distance between the downtown and a shopping mall. You go to the Burlington Mall on a regular day, you park somewhere in the middle of the parking lot. You have to walk all the way to the entrance to the mall, and then you have to walk halfway into the mall to get to the store that you're going to. Compare that to a downtown situation where if you can't park in front of the store, right next to it, across the street, there's not enough parking in this place. Well, that's something that's not unique to Groton, but it's a perception that's there. And so a lot more in terms of on-street parking, management, shared parking, municipal parking. We do have, the Prescott Center, in addition to adding vibrancy to the downtown, adds as kind of a safety valve where there is public parking at that property. And God forbid we lose that type of public park, because it's going to be necessary. I often thought, once I hear that we have a parking problem in downtown Groton, I'm thinking, hallelujah, that's a good thing. That's a good sign. It means more people are coming into town. Walkability is something that I think is very important. The previous speaker had mentioned going from Four Corners all the way up to the bridge. Well, we've made great strides in walkability. You can go from Mill Run Plaza all the way to CVS now with a sidewalk, which I think is very important. And for Gibbet Hill and Forge and Vine, Takashi, you just mentioned last night, we're doing the final review of a contract for the sidewalk. So all the inebriated people coming back from wedding receptions at Gibbet Hill at the middle of the night, holding their cocktails and their Gibbet Hill beer mugs, aren't going to get knocked down by walking in the street. So that's something that we've been working on, and I think that's something the town should pat itself on the back.
Thank you. So I'm going to change this word, implementing to driving. Driving. because as Takashi and the board have already indicated, the groundwork has been set with the overlay districts, the rezoning. There's more rezoning to do and more tuning to do, no question. Well, let me just bring out one example. Broad Meadow. It floods. It's got to be fixed. So are we going to fix it as a spot solution? Or are we going to fix it with a bigger plan in mind? And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about in terms of driving it and the town hall being on the same page, driving towards the direction that we aspire to go. Isn't that a great example?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So we need someone to drive it. We need some, well, I guess we're doing it. We're driving it, the Destination Groton Committee. But we're not going to be around for another 20 years. You know, and this is a 5, 10, 15, 20-year project. This is not going to happen overnight. It is going to happen, but it's not going to happen overnight. But my point is that we need the town hall to be keeping these broader solutions and implementation of these districts so that the economic development can thrive. And that's just one example. That's what I mean.
Master plan.
So that stuff has to be built into the master plan.
We talked about parking, we talked about walkability, but we have business centers or potential business centers that go all the way from Four Corners to the bridge. We talked about that in the previous panel. What we don't have is a local transportation system that would actually get people from one end to the other end. We're going to be putting in several hundred units at 500 Main Street of residential living. The grocery stores at the other end of that channel. So are we going to tell all of those people that move in that they have to get in a car and drive 4 or 5 miles to go get their groceries every week, versus having some sort of local transport that we start planning on? So if you truly want to think about how you can make a difference around the traffic and the other issues that we deal with in town, you have to come up with alternate solutions to everybody get in a car and go wherever you're going. And then you have a lot of relief on parking issues, you have a lot of relief on walkability issues, and I think that helps the overall situation. That has to be part of how we look at this, and interconnection just of the main centers within town, but also interconnection to the train station and air is another regional sort of solution that we should be investigating. It's not something that you do overnight, it's something that you do over decades, as you pointed out. But I think that's an important piece here too.
All right, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Who has questions this morning for anyone? Anyone on the town panel, or Tim Hess, or Greg, or the business panel? Raise your hand and I will come over and get you. Anyone? I saw someone raise their hand. Over here, Mark.
So I'm just wondering what actually happened with the town overlay district? Why wasn't there more lift at the time? Was there local objections that repressed that? Or do we actually feel like things were launching, we just haven't seen other folks come in behind that and build it up?
Anyone want to answer that?
I guess I want to answer that. I did outline a few thoughts. I suspect it's some mix of these things. One, and I'll tell you, I think I mentioned before that I lived in town for 8 years and moved away 12 years ago. In the intervening 12 years, I've been in Maynard, where, among others, we have a super walkable community. It's got a kind of textile, urban heritage there. But we have an overlay district. Fundamentally, the same set of goals that the overlay district here has: cohesion, walkability, ability to handle more, capture more of the leakage, do more of the sort of daily, be able to handle more of the daily things that people would otherwise have to leave town to do. I think an overlay district, the experience I've gained since leaving Groton, the value proposition has got to be crystal clear and really powerful, built into the bylaw. If the underlying zoning allows a given density with a given value, the density supported and enabled by the overlay zoning has to be dramatically better. If it is, everybody wants in. If it's not, or if it's not clear enough, it's easy to find hassle and hurdles and the administration and all kinds of problems. The other thing that I think is super important is the permit granting mechanism. And in my experience here with working with the 134 process, the design review committee was strictly advisory. And the mechanism, the legal mechanism for granting permits in town did not require any positive report from the design review committee. In fact, they got only a very negative report. I don't say that to bash that development. Nice things happen. I'm sure nice people live there. I'm sure it's made some wonderful contributions to town, but I think there was a slippage in the clutch plate where the rubber meets the road. The intent of the overlay district was not manifest at 134. And I think that not only was a missed opportunity there, but it was a very clear bad example of this is what we mean by the overlay district. You know, really badly missed opportunity to communicate and significantly, you know, communicating the wrong things, saying things we didn't mean. I think there's a deeper underlying issue that feels, to me, really vital, and that is the sense of identity of the culture. Like I talked about my experience in Maynard, for the creation of the overlay district there and the support of the overlay district there, it was not a heavy lift. People that live there, people that want to see it thrive, recognize and clearly see the heritage of that as a kind of urban place. The success of the district did not depend on rethinking, reimagining what might the town be. In Groton, it's a heavier lift. The heritage of the town has never been dense. It's never been, let's handle every single desire and want and need that we have here in town. There's never been a kind of urban fabric. The word urban is sort of a dirty word. You know, the word shortcut and cut through is a dirty word. We love cul-de-sacs. You know, they feel like safety. I get that. You know, there's a cultural attachment to the idea that this is a country town. Another way to say that might be, you know, to spin it in a negative way, it's a bedroom community. I think it feels to me like for any vision of an overlay district to thrive, it's got to first, but before the value proposition matters, before the permitting mechanism effectiveness matters or not, there's got to be a really cohesive buy-in to the idea of what it means. What does it mean for us as a town? What does it mean for me as a real estate owner, for the place I've chosen to live and raise my children? Can I envision that this notion of greater density and more business doesn't threaten country town? How can you get both? I think that figuring that out, unlocking that puzzle is the kind of, that's going to be the air that everybody breathes as they try to make the overlay district more clear, the value proposition more clear, and the permitting mechanisms. Without that kind of cohesion and understanding, I think the other things don't really matter.
I have two follow-up questions to this. I'll make it quick. Do you think a public-private cooperative would actually help drive this? Something that we work with some developers with a specific committee to actually build that out? And do you think that the Groton Hill Music has demonstrated to the community now that the threat of additional traffic isn't quite as bad as we thought it might be vis-a-vis the downtown overlay district?
You know, I don't think I'm qualified for either of those questions.
Okay.
I mean, public-private sounds great. I don't have any expertise, and I don't know anything about what the music center said. Sorry.
Other questions? Paul?
It's not so much a question as maybe an observation. And it's not, there's a big picture here of, you need a lot of money and a lot of developers and to build out this vision. But, I think the town maybe was a little weak, perhaps, in its response of how they could contribute. And I think one of the things that I see is, I'd call it an aesthetics of the downtown area, which, we have a beautiful town, but it could be better. We could have more green spaces, we could have more trees, we could have more paths. I think that the town can support a more inviting environment by, like that sidewalk on Route 40 that's coming in through the Complete Streets Committee. I think that's, those are excellent things to make it more inviting for people to walk around and see the town. In commons that have paths in the common, instead of just a green grass or something like that. And I don't have any specifics idea, but I think having a beautification committee in Groton wouldn't hurt for people to put their minds together and to create something better than we have. I think we can improve it and make it an even more inviting town. I mean, the big picture on that would be burying all the electric utility lines, which we've talked about for generations. But that's the kind of thing that, put some hard facts and figures into it, see if that's a possibility and how you might do that. Use CPA funds for a lot of this to make it not expensive to the town, but just, focus.
Thank you. Is that Patrick over here?
First, a question and a suggestion. Mr. Hess, as a talented, articulate, very successful architect, did you have trouble focusing your conversation while being interviewed by a firm? Feel free not to answer.
I always have trouble focusing my conversation.
A suggestion. Way back when we moved in town, back for us 30 years ago, people would often say, what can we do about the connector between Broadmeadow and Station Ave? Can we grade it at all or do anything with it? And everybody, the minute that conversation would start, somebody would say, oh, can't do anything, can't touch a thing there because of the oil company that was down at the end of the street, and there's environmental, this and that. And it would stop the conversation immediately. Then the rail trail came through. And it got paid, or it got graded, and that it came out of the conversation. So what I suggest is that developers or people approaching the town test assumptions, because a lot of them that might not be valid. And I would suggest the town be receptive to that and don't think of it as, oh, here comes a team of lawyers trying to find a way around this, but to work together, and you just might find that blockages that we subconsciously have might not be valid anymore. And that's all.
Ray Murphy, you that?
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff.
This is more observation and comment. I'm a little bit new to this. I haven't been involved in a lot of the discussions, but I'm encouraged by a lot of what's heard today. We are business owners in town. We've lived in town for a long time. To me, there's three elements to this. There's the planning, and planning is driven by common elements, connectivity, things like that. Lots of opportunity in Groton, and I wouldn't focus just on center Groton, up and down the entire strip. Opportunities for villages. I always look at CVS and the post office and say, why isn't that post office square? Why isn't there a village around there where you can drive in and out? Lots of things like that. So the planning is one component. The zoning to follow that, to make sure that you develop where you want to develop and you preserve where you want to preserve, farms and things like that. Density is a huge part of that, and we have to wrestle with the idea of how much density will you take. How do you make that retail space in that mixed-use project more affordable? You add more units to that building and less parking. Every parking space you have to include in that project is $10,000 or $15,000 worth of value that you could be using to reduce the price of your on-street retail. That's something the town can do. The third part is the execution. And I have to agree, I was a little disappointed in some of the town's responses. From a planner's point of view, maybe we have enough parking, we're subsidizing parking. From a user experience point of view, the perception is we don't have enough parking. And if you're a retailer trying to sell in this town, if your customers think you don't have enough parking, they're going someplace else. The difference between Groton and the mall, if the parking space isn't available in the middle of the lot, you can go out one row further. You still can find a parking space and you're still going to the store. You don't find a parking space in Groton, you're driving to Acton, you're going through. We don't have a shuttle from the new project at the end of town to get to the grocery store. Well, you know what? They're going to Townsend and Pepperell. Your tax dollars are going out of town. So the user experience part of it is where the town needs to focus as opposed to just a strict planning thing. The whole thing has to come together that way, and it is a long-term process. And, you know, I'm really encouraged that we're thinking about it, because otherwise you end up with a bunch of one-off projects that, yeah, the zoning allows you to get your permit quickly, but as you pointed out, Jeff, how does that relate to what you're trying to do in the end, right? It has to all tie together. So I guess there's no question there, but I don't want to lose track of the people we're trying to attract, the business we're trying to attract. You have to think about it from their point of view. You've got to make it easy for them, and that's parking and transportation, places to go and all of that. And, you know, people want to come here, we can see that. Projects are happening. It's up to us to make it a place where once they come once, they want to come back.
Any other questions?
Right here.
Okay, right here, and then I'll get to you, Art.
I'm actually bouncing it off of that. I'm sitting here thinking, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. My name is Pam Mariano. I'm the owner, along with my husband Al, of Mariano Restaurant Group. And thank you for inviting us, by the way. This is great. But do you mind me asking what business you own?
Body, mind, spirit.
Okay, because I have to tell you, it's so interesting. One of the members up here of the board mentioned perception. And I've been living in Pepperell now since 2000, and I've come to Groton for services for all those years. And I was sitting here counting how many services that I come monthly to here in Groton, not including eateries. And I've never had a problem with parking. So, but not to say, because I'm also on the other end, you know, you talk about enjoy the experience as a consumer and as a business owner. And I know the first thing Al and I think about is parking, you know, when we're doing our businesses. But here in Groton, one of my experiences as a consumer is when I think of coming here, I enjoy the walk. I enjoy walking through the town. With that said, I also heard about the transportation, having buses going from, because you're not going to walk with a bunch of groceries, or, you know, maybe if you have to go to the medical center, you're not going to walk there either if you're not feeling well. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just trying to open your minds to, a lot of business owners automatically think, like I come here and they'll say, sorry about the parking. I say, I don't have a problem with parking. I like walking. So I'm just giving the other side of that. I know certain businesses do need parking.
Can I don't disagree with you, but what we're talking about is a Groton that expands, that brings more people in. We're talking about inviting a lot more people into town. You have to plan for the parking.
Yes, I agree.
That's what I'm talking
I agree with that. And the other thing, one last thing I just wanted to tell you, we've opened businesses in, I think it's five cities or 5 towns. And like the committee was saying, it is so hard to get through the town hall for everything, because some of it is just, you do your due diligence in your businesses and how much traffic there is, but no one does the due diligence on what it takes to get through a town hall. So I'm sitting here enjoying this Groton map so much, love it, so great. I think every business should be on it. And thinking a Groton map to opening a new business in town would be phenomenal. And if you could afford having that coach or that business person in town that you go to the town hall, that's the first step you make. Because I have to tell you, it takes us over a year to open businesses in all towns except for New Hampshire. New Hampshire was very user-friendly. They just like, woo, getting there. But anyway, wanted to give you what's happening now, a snapshot of now from your consumer, me. I do a lot of business here. I love Groton. And as a business owner, thinking about opening a business in Groton, the first thing that comes to my mind is, oh, I'd love to be part of Groton, but how long is it going to take to get everything done? So, and that, you're not alone in Groton, by the way, it's everywhere. So getting rid of those, the gentleman over there talked about getting rid of those preconceived thoughts, the naysayers for years. Al and I have overcome so many things that people said to us were impossible. So that's the other thing about getting out there. And I think a lot of people in the community, I have to be honest with you, do not know Groton has all this to offer. So anyway, the marketing can get these maps out there.
Thank you.
Last question.
All right, our request. I'm coming to you.
Here you go.
I'm Mark Prest, and I'm very encouraged by this meeting, I really am. I was on the Economic Development Committee years ago for 4 years. When I started on that, I was 6'5". Greg can attest to that. I'm very frustrated because there were people that were totally against development in Groton. What I'm hearing today is that Groton Hill Music is having a major influence on the town of Groton relative to investment and revenue, taxes, meals, etc. My wife was on the Indian Hill Committee that began the effort to develop Groton Hill Music. She was on that for 9 years. And about 8 years ago, my wife was chairman, and she asked me to meet with Mark and tell him about what was going to happen in Groton. That a group had bought 110 acres of land. I tried to sketch out what was going to happen, and Mark looked at me like I had 2 hits. He didn't believe me. And he kept saying, all right, who's paying for this? I said, one man. He said, which man? I said, I can't tell you. My wife would cut my head off. He kept calling me to find out who that was, and I never did tell him. I think people know who it is now. But I do have a suggestion. The fact that we got music in Groton, and that's been such a big success. I mentioned this to Greg and other people, and I'd like to see if get a reaction to that, is differentiate Groton from other towns around by making Groton a center of music. I think John Emerald might be doing that to a degree already by having music events in this building here. I'd love to see more venues, restaurants, and other things start doing music things, and it'd be great to have a pub. Greg and I agreed with that this morning. If we had a pub, you'd have to ring me out the next morning almost twice a week. And a great place to start on that would be the Station House. I'm hoping somebody would buy the Station House and turn it into a pub restaurant with music. I think many of us would love to attend that. And I know I would. So that's just a suggestion. And I hope somebody says, okay, that's something you could do fairly quickly. You don't have to build new infrastructure. You got the infrastructure. You just have to start planning on doing something like that. So thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more. Phil?
So I don't have a question, I just have a bald-faced plug. So within your packets this morning, we have a little sheet that looks like this. And I just want to let people know that right at this very same facility in May, on May 19th, we're doing an EV and hybrid electric vehicle petting zoo right here. And I want to thank the Groton Inn for making that possible. It's a chance for people to get out and actually talk to the owners of different types of electric vehicles about their experiences buying, maintaining, and operating those vehicles. And it's a way for us to, I talked about ecotourism earlier. This is one of those ecotourism topics. And so the Groton Inn is actually helping us with the marketing to their constituents as well, so that we can reach out to a broader segment of people. So I welcome anybody who wants to come and check out EVs on May 19th.
Thank you. All right.
So on your table, you see these. MyDestinationVision.com and a QR code. Here you go. They both go to the same place, in case you're technology inept. The ask is this. Essentially, if if you see the vision, if you feel the vision and the mission, and you agree as a business owner what the potential economic viability is to grow, expand, and for others to come into town to do the same with the vision and mission, we're asking you to please go to that website through that QR code or what have you, and just sign your name and email address in support of our mission, of our cause. What we need to do is to build a bigger, better constituency and support, an undercurrent, if you will, that helps things move along. So if you please would go to that website and do that for us and sign up, just register. I believe. You know, that would be great. And with that, thank you all very much. I hope that you got something out of this, at least an understanding as to where we're coming from and what we are and what we are not.
Yes.
Okay? Thank you all very much for coming.